So today we are discussing the pre-main sequence evolution. So what is the basic idea is we have already talked about star formation, right? So it all starts when a large cloud it starts contracting. So we have talked about the various criteria when contraction starts due to some disturbance, right? We talked about genes instability, genes instability and all that. So you can say that there are several stages of this evolution. So the final stage of this pre-main sequence, main sequence is the stage in the star's life where it spends most of the time of its life, main sequence. In the HR diagram, remember? So in the HR diagram, if you will remember, so this is temperature increasing, luminosity increasing, and it was like this. Well, log plot, of course. So this is white dwarf, this is main sequence, there are giants, supergiants. Okay. Now I am talking about this main sequence. So the question is, where was the star previous to coming to this main sequence? And this is what we have here. So it all starts, you can say, from the interstellar cloud. This is stage 1. Stage 1. So basically we have a very large interstellar cloud. It is quite large, very low density, diffuse, you see, but the size is enormous. Its diameter is of the order of 10 to the power 14 kilometers. And what about the mass? Its mass is, you see, 1000 times that of the sun. And a typical temperature is 10 Kelvin. We have talked about this, right? In our cloud, when cloud collapse begins, in those classes we have talked about that. And density is of the order of 10 to the power 9 particles. This is just a rough number. So now you remember during the early stages of this contraction we have fragmentation. We talked about this. So basically this big cloud, you can think that in the course of its gravitational contraction, slowly and gradually it is now breaking up into smaller parts. And then inside each of the smaller parts there will be individual contractions, right? Individual. And as a result again it will be slowly fragmenting into even more smaller parts. So this is what happening in the stage 1. So main idea to remember is we have an interstellar cloud where we have fragmentation. This is the main point to remember. Okay. Now, so what about after that? After that we have stage 2. Now let us talk about the individual fragments. So each of the fragments, as you can see over here, they are contracted by itself. Very simple picture. The same old thing. They are contracting by itself. Now what will happen as a result of contraction? Atoms and molecules, they will come close to each other. So density rises. Nice. And as a result, you see, radiation cannot escape. Again, why? Say for example, there is an atom over here. Due to certain reasons, it gets in an excited state, and during de-excitation, the trapped radiation, when it emits a photon, that photon doesn't escape the entire fragment, but it is absorbed by a nearby atom, because there are so many atoms of the same type, and again that atom will in fact be excited. So what will happen? First, you can think of it like that. There are so many bulbs. First, this bulb glows, and then it stops because photon is emitted. Now the next bulb glows. So this is going on all over there, because the trapped radiation, it is now again being retrapped and retransmitted and retrapped, but it is not exiting the fragment. Okay, so radiation cannot escape, and as a result what will happen is that this trapped radiation will increase the temperature inside. Okay, and so because of this, we talked about the consequences in our previous classes. The fragmentation will stop. Right? Adiabatic, isothermal, we talked about this criteria. So, fragmentation will stop. But remember, even though fragmentation stops, contraction continues. So, in a way, here we have fragmentation starts, you can say, and contraction continues. At the end of stage 2, fragmentation stops, but again contraction continues. Okay, now let's talk about stage 3. In stage 3, as a result of this thing, you see this temperature keeps on increasing. Now here, the central temperature, it rises to around 10,000 Kelvin. However, the surface temperature, I am considering say one of the fragments. The surface temperature is not that high. It's not very much higher than 10 Kelvin. Say 100 or say 200 Kelvin or say 1000 Kelvin or so. Not very high. So this means that there is a very dense opaque region in the center, and that is known as the protostar. And the surface of the protostar is called photosphere. Okay. Now you must be saying, sir, the temperature is very high, so the nuclear reactions can start. No. Why? We have seen for nuclear reaction you need several million degrees. It's not that much high. So this stage is somewhere in between this very cool stage, early beginning stage, this one, and the later on stages where we have a star. That means where there is nuclear reaction. Okay, so we are in between here. Now here you see, because of this low surface temperature, but even though the surface temperature is low, the surface area is large. So each of these fragments, they have in fact size that of 100 times that of Sun. So because of such large size, even though the surface temperature is small, overall the luminosity is very high. Okay, so luminosity you see is of the order of 1000 times that of Sun. And in this stage, here if you can say this is the protostar, then a protostellar disk is formed around this protostar. It is still moving. Because why is there rotation? Because during the collapse, it is never static. The whole thing, it will always have an angular momentum and it will be conserved, right? If the system is not disturbed after during this collapse. During the early phases, because of some disturbance, some angular momentum is transmitted in particular direction in the cloud. Okay? In this fragment, because of this, say some disturbance, there is some particular angular momentum injected into the system. Now that will be there, it will be conserved, and the whole system will keep on rotating and all that. And so you will see after this stage, a protostellar disk will be formed around this. So what is happening, previously we have got round stage, but now slowly it is being smeared in two different parts. One is the central very high part, high temperature part, and another is a sort of ring type structure. You see, our solar system has formed because of such formations, and later on these formations will later on be fragmented into planets because of several other criteria as well, several other disturbances as well. But this is the overall idea. So this is the point up to stage 3. Okay, so now we will move forward after that, and we will talk about when the star moves on to the main sequence. Okay. Okay, so now we will talk about the later stages. So previously we talked about stage 1, 2, 3. Now we will talk about the later stages. So up till now, if you talk about, sir, where was the star in the HR diagram? Actually, the luminosity was still not very high. But now, because of the increasing temperature and the luminosity, so increasing temperature, what? The luminosity is bigger, also increases, and now slowly at the end of stage 3, the star can be plotted in the HR diagram. So now let us talk about stage 4. In stage 4, the star is approximately, there is an approximate equilibrium, not that much. I mean to say, still there is no hydrostatic equilibrium. Remember this, no HE, no hydrostatic equilibrium. I am saying there is a sort of approximate equilibrium between gravity and pressure. Right? These are important points. Now, so as I was saying, the properties of the star can now be plotted in the HR diagram. And now, if you look closely, so this is where I have plotted. Previously, it was blank. Now you can see some structure. Let us concentrate on this part now. So what is happening? The temperature is increasing. So temperature increasing means the point is moving towards this, and also luminosity is increasing. So the point is moving like this slowly, right? So this is more or less the stage 4, where you can plot it on the HR diagram. But remember, there are two parts of stage 4. First part is where the temperature increases and luminosity increases. Good. But the next part is this part here. What is happening? Here also temperature increases but luminosity decreases. Now you must be wondering, why is luminosity decreasing? So for that you have to consider, why was the luminosity increasing in the first place? Luminosity was increasing because the surface area was large. Now what is happening after that? The surface area is large, there is no fragmentation, but contraction is there. So surface temperature will become lower and lower and lower. And as a result, even if the temperature becomes higher, because of more decrease in surface temperature, the overall luminosity will decrease. Right? So you see, this is the part. So first it increases and now it is decreasing. This part. So the latter part of stage 4, where luminosity decreases and the temperature slightly increases. This part over here, this point in the HR diagram, this track, it is known as Hayashi track. This is very important. You must write it down. Okay? So between 4 and 5 we have Hayashi track. Fine? Now, okay, good. So basically, as I was saying, the surface temperature is more or less constant, but the surface area decreases due to shrinking, and as a result the luminosity decreases. Fine. The slight increase, very slight, not constant, very slight increase. Okay, now let us talk about stage 5. So what is happening? You see, even though the luminosity decreases, the temperature keeps on increasing. Now this is the point, this point 5, where the temperature of the core, not the surface, core, it reaches around 10 to the power 7. So threshold for fusion. And nuclear fusion starts. But remember, what is the surface temperature of the sun? 5800 degree Kelvin or 6000. But here the surface temperature is still not that high. It is 4500 Kelvin. So the surface temperature, even though is lower than the sun, but still, since the fusion starts, so now in stage 5 we have a newborn star. So you must remember that in this pre-main sequence stage, in stage 5 is where we have the newborn star. But still it has not entered the HR diagram. No, it has entered the HR diagram, but it has still not entered the main sequence. This is important. So stage 5 is where newborn star is formed. Good. Okay, so now we have the final stage, stage 6. What happens? The star arrives in main sequence. Here. So previously the star, it was like this, then later part of stage 4 it went down. We have stage 5, and now you see what happens after stage 5. All of a sudden the temperature increases, but the luminosity doesn't increase. Why?
Radiation.
From here to here the equilibrium start becoming more and more exact. I mean to say, previously the equilibrium is not that much, but now equilibrium starts becoming, I mean the resistance by the gas pressure is now more. So even though gravity is resisting, it is not resisting in that much faster way. And also because of this increased fusion temperature, what will happen? The temperature keeps on increasing nearby and more fusion will start. So as a result, overall temperature increases sharply. Okay? So you see, overall temperature increases and slowly the temperature in the core is slowly dissipated towards the surface, and so the surface temperature also keeps on increasing. Okay? And now we have 6000 degree Kelvin. It's the surface temperature. Good. And finally, the thing we have been waiting for, hydrostatic equilibrium is established. And now we can say that the star has arrived on the main sequence. So these are two different things. A newborn star means fusion stars. And main sequence, star has arrived, means two criteria. Number one, I am talking about star. So fusion has established, it has started. Number two, hydrostatic equilibrium is also established. Along with that, you see the energy generated in the core, it also matches the energy radiated from the surface. So you can say we have a global thermal equilibrium. It's radiated already. Okay? And this stage, when it arrives on this main sequence, this is known as ZAMS, zero age main sequence. At this point, we have a ZAMS star, zero age main sequence star. Okay? So that's the overall story of star birth to its journey to the star. I mean the main part of the life where it spends is the main sequence. So this is the overall journey. Right? Now, what about, so this journey, remember the fragment which we started considering has a mass of the order of sun. Now suppose that fragment has a larger mass. What will happen? Larger mass means larger size. So even though the same thing remains the same, because of the larger size, the overall luminosity will be larger. And so as a result, you will see, because of this, I am talking about the three stellar mass fragment compared to one solar mass fragment. Because of larger size, larger diameter, what will happen? More luminosity. So overall, you see the entry point becomes different. It's on the higher luminosity side. So the same story
will be repeated.
Is repeated, but the overall, because of the larger size, the luminosity is higher. Same for the lower mass fragment, luminosity will be lower, and the overall the story is repeated again. And remember this point here, this point of entry, this is where I have written here surface temperature of the order of 6000 Kelvin. So in the HI diagram, you must remember that this temperature refers to that of the surface temperature, okay, not the core temperature. Core temperature I am writing out separately, but here I am mentioning, here also you see this point, it corresponds to the surface around 6000 Kelvin.